We saved the best for last, obviously. This is called Inspiring the Next Generation. So, welcome. I would like for everybody just to give a quick intro and then we will jump into the conversation. So, Sandy, why don't you kick us off?
I'm Sandy Jackalow, Chief Technology Officer at Empire State Realty Trust. I also am on the REBNY, the Real Estate Board of New York's Technology Steering Committee, run their Cyber Committee, and probably most important and relevant to all of this is I actually one of the co-founders of the PropTech Challenge, which is all about innovation and the next level and the next generation of technology and individuals.
Awesome.
Hello there, I'm Rebecca Tran. I've been a commercial real estate broker for about 15 years, starting in the Mid-Atlantic region and moving to New York City about 5 years ago.
Thank you. I don't think I introduced myself, although if you've been watching all day, you know who I am. My name is Marielle Ibrahimi. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Disrupt CRE. So thank you guys for joining us. Aria.
Hello, my name is Arya Rajmohan. I recently graduated 7th grade and I'm a member at the Rocket Club Academy.
Woohoo.
Hi, I'm Brian Schwagel. I'm the head of real estate for the Shack Institute of Real Estate at NYU SPS, the undergraduate program, and I'm the former head of real estate for the Hearst Corporation and NBC Universal.
Hi, and thank you all for joining. My name is Cameron Spiller. I am a former Peace Corps volunteer and now a master's student at the NYU Shack Institute. I'm studying for my master's in real estate development. So thank you for having me here.
So thank you all. I want to give some context for why we're doing this session, although there shouldn't be too much explanation needed. I started Disrupt CRE a little over 8 years ago now, and before I started, I was being pushed to come join some conversations in commercial real estate, mostly in the associations, and I pushed back a lot. I said, this has nothing to do with me, and it sounds frankly kind of boring. And so I pushed back for a long time, until I started attending some of the association meetings and I started asking questions and I started realizing what amazing opportunities this industry held, and especially what connected me and drew me in was technology. We had this massive flood of new technology that entered the space and we had no concept of how it was connected to the industry at all. And so we started hosting events and I became a student of the industry by way of hosting events. And so I'm still a student today, as all of us are and hopefully forever will be. And so a lot of what I aspire to do with my career is usher in and give purpose to this next generation to find importance and spend their energy and talent with us in commercial real estate, because not enough people wake up and say, I want to be in the commercial real estate industry, and they should, because it's an amazing industry and there's more opportunity than we know what to do with. So technology, the great connector. What does it mean to you guys? Sandy, we're definitely starting with you. Being a co-founder of the PropTech Challenge, but also just being a conduit of technology and part of that conversation for such a long time, you work with a lot of startup founders and tech founders. What are you seeing out there? How are they doing? Are people interested and excited to be working in this space?
You know, it's a time like we've never seen before. Things we used to dream about, we now have the technology to enable it. And you know, when you talk about real estate, it's not only where we come to work, we work from home, we live at home. So real estate is everything that we do every day, no matter where we are. So we really are, it's everything from the smart devices in our homes to how we're connected through video conferences, but it's the technology out there. I'll give you a perfect example when you talk about the way we get connected. At Empire State Realty Trust, we actually have 2 people in our marketing department just doing TikTok videos. So when you think about how we all get connected, there are so many different platforms out there. People are looking for ways to make life easier for each other, to connect people, to just take something that we've taken for granted. But one of the most important things is, with technology and the connection, you have to understand what doesn't work and make something better. You can't just come up with a wild idea that has no real purpose.
What do you guys think about that on this end? Brian, what do you think?
Yeah, TikTok is the way to go. We took surveys of incoming students at NYU and how they got their information. You can mail out catalogs and they think you're wasting valuable resources, paper. You can go to the website, and it doesn't have enough information, but if you look at what they consider to be authentic discussion by their peers, that receives the biggest response. And luckily we're in New York City, where there's a lot to TikTok about. So, and you know, that ability to adjust the way that you communicate to the next generation is very important. So, I mean, you may, the idea is to be authentic, but the idea is to put yourself out there. You need to use LinkedIn, you need to use Instagram, you need to use TikTok and other social media to communicate. And that's just another form of communication, just like today is in our live broadcast, right?
Right.
If you want to have people understand what the next generation should be looking for and what you can learn from them, then your communication tools need to be adjusted accordingly.
And we will talk a little bit about skills, and certainly you're an educator. You instill skills. Aria, you're a student. Cameron, you're a student. You guys are learning skills actively from school. So we will talk about skills, and social media networking is a huge, huge, huge one. But I think for the sake of starting our conversation, I really want to make an important message around how technology is also a connector across generations. So it can be very intimidating for our existing industry to consider even technology, and it has been for a long time. I mean, we've been talking about this forever, and we've moved the needle forward, but not quite enough. So as much as the next generation can learn from us and from conversations like this, we also have so much to learn from these two gentlemen and from their peers. And so I see this kind of opportunity to connect in a way over technology that maybe we weren't so open to before. Would you guys agree with that? I mean, Cameron, do you want to chime in about how you connect?
Absolutely, I think that's a great point. And when you go into some of the rooms in commercial real estate, there's a huge age gap that you usually experience right off the bat. Someone like Aria is probably going to walk into a room, he's going to be the youngest one there, and the next one is going to be me. And then it jumps up to Brian's young self. And then there's a huge gap in between, you know, just the generations. And I think a great part of the technology, LinkedIn, has allowed us to be a little more connected with each other. We're able to find each other more easily, right? We can find someone, we can type in something that resonates with what we've experienced in our past, and find people that have had, you know, similar life paths as us as well, and then connect with them and reach out to them. So technology it enables us, like you were saying earlier, Sandy, it enables us to connect with each other, to you know, to speak with each other, to bridge that gap that we would have. It would have been extremely hard. I mean, how many times do you run across 12-year-olds in your day?
Not as often as I probably should, but
you know, and I don't either. You know, and I'm closer to that level. And actually, what Brian is doing as well at NYU, and what we're doing at NYU is quite remarkable. Where we have students that are in high school or thinking about going to colleges throughout the world, and we're telling them about real estate. What are some of the opportunities that are here? And not just to preach to them and tell them to come to NYU and spend, you know, whatever on the tuition here at the school, but, you know, how can you start to use what you're learning and what you're exposed to now through commercial real estate in your very own communities, right? And that's the most important part about connecting with people from different generations, is allowing them to understand how the exposure at a very young age will enable them to realize their dreams in the future, you know, in your built environment.
So Cameron's right, but we have in New York City that we do exceptionally well in the real estate community is we invite other people in. So a lot of what
We
the
do?
NYU...
We do that well?
Well, the
In this
NYU...
industry?
The NYU curriculum is
We're all
based...
going with it.
No, the NYU curriculum is based on experiential learning. So coming out of the pandemic, we had all of these wonderful real estate developments surrounding us. And every one of those developers or owners or brokers or finance people were willing to really make themselves available in the classroom to explain to students, if I could do this, you can do it too. And I think those touchstones are what we can do even better in terms of using technology to explain the story better. The idea that community involvement is important. The idea of what the next generation is going to expect, not just from technology, but also, you know, in terms of amenities, but in terms of how they're going to perceive the room that they want to learn in. And is that room going to be completely different?
Is it
that
going
has
to be
much more
completely,
technology.
maybe it's completely digital, maybe it's a metaverse classroom, and we're gonna maybe pass the mic to Arya. Arya, can you tell us about some of the tech that really excites you that you're learning about?
So the tech that really excites me that I'm learning about is probably mostly the metaverse and how you can go to places without actually being there, and how you can interact with items without having to have that item right in front of you.
Totally. So actually, no, keep that mic. I have more questions for you. So you actually mentioned something super interesting in our prep and talk about a generational connection. You talked about how you are building buildings in the metaverse, which is super awesome. We're going to ask you more about that. But you also talked about in your family, your uncle is also building real estate in the metaverse, and maybe it's a point of connection. Is it something that you guys get to connect over?
Yeah, sometimes you could. Last time I went over to Atlanta, he asked me for some ideas, and so it was a good bonding experience, which I really enjoyed.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so like I got to use my creativity and whatever I wanted to do to make what he was building a place that would make people feel more comfortable in.
That's super cool, and I'm sure he was able to learn a ton from you, because for you, you probably are playing video games and doing some of this just as second nature, where, you know, some of our generations and people like me, you know, we didn't grow up with this stuff, or maybe our video games were a little bit more 2D, you know, and we didn't have the technology certainly to go virtual, let alone, you know, multi-reality or mixed reality, forget about it. So I'm sure he learned a lot from you, and I'm sure you got to express your creativity, and you guys had that connection. So that's what we're talking about when I talk about these generational connections and how powerful that is if we're open to exchanging information and ideas in this way.
You know, one of the key things that, you know, that everybody's talking about is it's all about knowing your audience, because everybody that we're looking for is on a different place. It's not just TikTok, it's not just Instagram, it's Facebook, it's Twitter, it's websites, it's, you know, everyone's connected through the mobile phones, but you need to know your audience so you can tell the message so that you can actually connect with them.
Yeah.
You're forgetting also the learning tool that exists by you using Twitter or you using LinkedIn, as Cameron said. You're absorbing more of what's out there, and then by absorbing that, especially as an educator, you can give it back. So communication is a two-way street, right? So you really have to be active in the space in order to make it work. And speaking about you know, design and construction moving forward, it's definitely moving at the rapid pace that he's talking about. So there's a whole new generation that will be in the world of construction and already exist in the world of design, let alone leasing, where headsets are on and you're looking at a space and building it out completely different than you used to before. Once you can get rid of the headsets, which will come, and you're in a universe where you are, you know, designing on a screen in a different way, that's what's going to lead to the buildings, the built environment of tomorrow. So it's more than just buildings. What Cameron's talking about is community engagement, right? And it's also, what does the pedestrian paths look like? What does the urban environment look like? What kind of parks are we putting next to this? What kind of sustainability elements are we using to it? And it's easier when you have these tools in front of you to be able to project them forward.
Just a quick comment. It's just so exciting. Like, how often do we see like a 7th grader in a room with people that are seasoned professionals?
He just graduated from 7th grade.
Oh. He's going to be at NYU next year.
Yeah,
right? Super smart.
Stick with me, kid. With scholarship in your future.
How often do we get to see this? You know, I think this next generation, across real estate, across different industries as well. You saw it in climate change as well. A couple years ago, you know, you see people that are like in 8th grade, ninth grade and they're going to conferences and they're speaking and they're in front of an audience of seasoned professionals. This next generation is so engaged with what is going on in the world right now, and we have to thank technology for that.
Do you think there's a level of fearlessness
Absolutely.
that we have in this? Do you think it's
Absolutely.
because we're more encouraged to fail, like more than any other industry? Like we're more encouraged to fail and take risks. Like startup culture is something that wasn't really around for that long in the way that it is now, where we accept pursuing risk and having failure for the sake of learning. We were talking about this just last night.
And every failure is a learning experience, and that's the best part of it, which is why, you know, you fail fast, and you move on, and you learn from that, and apply it to the next thing that you're doing.
So it creates a fearlessness to put yourself out there, like this amazing young man who said, yeah, I can do that, because of course he can, because this is just a conversation. And so when you start to realize that these executives sitting here are just people, right? And you can make genuine connections, truly, because I think when it comes to the next generation pursuing relationships, and we'll get into this a little bit more, it can be very intimidating. There's a lot of narrative of this is a very closed industry that has a big barrier to entry. But the fearlessness of this next generation and persistence and hopefully patience, which is something we don't really have, but hopefully we can all get there, will get us there.
You know, it's going to be so important for each of us in this room, but especially the next generation, you are to understand that you are just as great as any person in this universe. Right? That means you're able to achieve just as much as what they've achieved, if not more. Whatever your dream has been. And as you like expose yourself to people that have, you know, started their own thing, Sandy, Rebecca, Marielle, Brian, yourself, you're gonna realize that, like you said in the prep, you know, we just have unlimited possibilities in this world, right? And I want to hear more about that too, but I'm gonna let you host.
Yeah, well, I do. I want to talk about, you know, this next, and we will come back to technology, but I want to talk about diversity and inclusion, because like when I first started Disrupt CRE and we had the first conferences, I looked around in the industry and I was like, do we have any like ladies that are not in like HR? Do we have any, and at the time, that was the diversity I was looking for, because I was looking for representation of me in the industry, and we didn't, and I'm trying to put panels together and I'm like, not a lady to be found, like technology industry, hello, nobody? Okay, cool. So it's like, how much, and Rebecca, I would love for you to kick this off, because we talk a lot about like representation in our industry, and you know, what is it, how do you see diversity and inclusion playing a role in inspiring the next generation?
I think what happens is when the next generation looks at the commercial real estate industry right now, they definitely don't see a lot
of themselves
in there.
Right.
But the thing is, I feel like that generation also comes very unfiltered and willing to make the change, which past generations really were going status quo. So with that, people feel like they don't need to see that because they can be that. And that starts you know, the tidal wave. So I moved to New York City 5 years ago to just kind of diversify my own career path. And when I started here, it came with the commitment that I kind of was starting my business from scratch. I was prospecting, I was making the relationships, the networking, and it was hard. Like it wasn't, I mean, as diverse as New York City is, the commercial real estate industry in New York City is not so much. And so it was you know, it was coming in and being not just patient enough, but having the inner strength enough to say, I'm going to do it.
The tenacity.
Yeah. And being okay that sometimes I would be turned away, turned down, and whatever it may be, but wanting to be that part of that change. And the only way you can be the change is if you go forth. So that's what I just chose to do. And plenty of times there was very many discouraging things, and even now, you know, when people recognize my name or they know who I am and what I do, there's still kind of barriers that I still hit up against, and it's okay. And I find like I've always been given lots of advice, do this, do that, but in the end, it was I am who I am, and I can be who I am in here or wherever it may be. So it's just knowing that you can still be you, and that's part of what makes the change in the industry.
I love that. Cameron, you want to talk about how much you think diversity and inclusion will inspire the next generation?
Super important, super important. Rebecca, you know, props to you coming to New York and it's a tough market to be in. It's really, really tough, very competitive. So I can only imagine how the last 5 years have been for you here, and very proud to see you here as well. So props to you. Looking into the future, you know, diversity, equity, and inclusion is, I guess it's like one of those like buzz phrases now, right? And
Yeah.
we all imagine, you know, something different when we think about diversity, equity, and inclusion. But as we look at the corporate structure and just get a little more technical here, and looking at the businesses and looking at the different real estate firms that we own, there has to be an initiative, a strategy that is just as important as our investment strategy in our funds, right? When we're looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion, there has to be measurable change. There has to be a plan to get more people into, not only into the firm, right? Because we could talk about the internships and filling up the quota, and we've all been good at, you know, filling up the quota at schools, whatever we wanted to do. But it's about, you know, having diversity at every single level of your corporation, and the executive suites, right? And the C-suites as associates, people that have decision-making power that are from different backgrounds, right? And understanding that diversity is, it's not just a color thing or person thing, right? We do need to make sure that we're talking about bringing black and brown people, like being very specific about that, bringing women, being very specific on these topics, but also understanding the difference in background, the diversity in backgrounds that we all include and bring to the table, right? This is very much an asset. It's very much an asset. Diversity is an asset to any firm, right? As we get further and further
Particularly
into
for real estate.
Particularly for real estate, right? And that's just, I'm not even talking about the people at this point. I'm talking about diversifying your portfolio. You know, when we're looking at opportunities and moments like this right now in real estate, right? Where many people are thinking that we're coming onto a recession. How do you find opportunity in a recession? You diversify your approach. You look at different strategies and different sub-markets. That's how you get ahead in a very competitive market. You diversify. That's the only thing that's going to happen in the future that's going to allow us to be the greatest country, to be the greatest city, to be the greatest firm. We have to diversify our people.
So I think there is a recognition, at least within the New York real estate community, that we need to do more in that regard. As an educator, I have scholarships available, but if the students have no exposure to real estate to begin with, or the fact that it's a career that can lead to wealth creation and a change in their life for good, and also there are a multitude of jobs that are available for them out there, then you're not going to get those people there. So we've seen a shift towards more scholarships that are diversity related. I started a program at NYU, as Cameron was mentioning, for NYU students. Taconic, the developer, provided a grant to me to take 10 women and 10 men that were high school students that lived within the New York public housing environment. NYCHA here is one of the largest public housing facilities that we have anywhere in the country. And we were able to take them on a weekend program to expose them to careers in real estate, and also what would college life be like.
Wow.
And the two things together just were amazing in terms of the light bulbs that went off in their mind, their ability to say, oh, I didn't know we could do this, or the fact that it just unleashed a sense of creativity within them in terms of their projects and what they submitted. And that's what we need to do. We need to reach out. We need to make a difference. We need to be the change that was mentioned here. And I think we're moving in that direction. At least I hope we are.
You know, I can share, because being in this industry for a long time, there's been progress. There's not enough progress. A lot of companies are now having diversity committees, inclusionary committees, which is really important to help bring that voice in. What you're also seeing is a change in recruiting. They're going to colleges that they never would have thought about before. They're using different job fairs than they've ever used before. So there is an effort. It's got a long way to go still. You know, I will say one thing consistently over the years is technology has been one of those areas where there has been more diversity within the company than some of the other C-suites and the other departments. And I will tell you, Cameron, the best part about what you said is it brings different perspectives to the table. It was a narrow view before, so you weren't addressing all the needs of all the people. So as you get the diversity, you get those other ideas, you get those other perspectives, and ultimately what you do at the end of the day is you come up with something that's much more holistic, that connects everybody even more because you're addressing what everybody wants to see, not just a very small, narrow segment.
Absolutely.
And I think that, diversity and inclusion goes beyond just, who we have sitting on a panel or on a board of executives, but it's actively including variety of perspective to make the best built world that we can have. Because I use this city and buildings differently than Aria does, than you do, than you do, than you do, than you do. Women and men use buildings differently. Mothers have different needs. So we all have a valuable perspective in the ecosystem of what makes an amazing built world. I mean, age is a major part of that diversity. And how does he want to go to school and learn in the building that he may go to every day, or play with his friends, or whatever it is, the experiences that you get to have from just a living, learning, playing opportunity. So the full ecosystem of perspective, and we do need to get granular. It's not men and women and this background or that background. It's everything.
And that's our future office, person who's going to lease an office, buy a home.
Make an office first.
We need to understand what he and his generation want to see, because otherwise we're not future-proofing our industry and we're going to make a mistake. We're going to build something that works for today, but not for tomorrow, that it supports what you need and what your generation needs. So we have to listen to you.
Frankly, if we don't, they will build it themselves. They'll build it themselves.
And probably better.
And they'll do it for exactly what they want.
Yeah.
So is that a little intimidation factor? I mean, anybody else want to comment on the diversity and inclusion part of the conversation? We can certainly come back. Aria, do you have any thoughts to share on this one, or you want to move on? We can move on to the next one. Yeah, please do.
Part of doing a diverse change in anything, whether it be this industry or another, is kind of looking at the past and accepting the past. Sometimes the past is ugly, and it's okay that it is, as long as we can acknowledge that and understand what we want to change in it. And just a quick anecdote is probably a few months ago, I was approached by a headhunter for a job of head of real estate in a big retail corporation. And as my application went forth, and everyone was really excited to have a female in this position and whatever it may be, but it got to executive management, and very bluntly, my application got cut short, mainly because there was a few who said they didn't feel it, they weren't comfortable with a female on the executive board. And while everyone else was very apologetic, and they said part of me bringing me in was hopefully getting the change for
Past that
and
process.
they just, but it just was one of those things that the company clearly couldn't get past that yet. And it was disappointing, but it was also interesting to me. Like I wasn't really, it wasn't to a point where I was really heartbroken per se, but I was intrigued that they did have people who they're trying to push it and were stopped, but they were still very adamant that it could be done.
It's amazing that they were willing to say that to you.
Exactly.
That's the most shocking part in
2022,
2022.
which definitely was very interesting to me.
So we learned a lot of things during the pandemic, certainly about technology. As a teacher, when you had to speak to a screen behind you, you were more of a game show host, to the box that was presented. But you had to be more engaging. You had to really be more of an intentional approach to how you were going to engage individuals in the classroom. But I think things that we also learned, right, is that we benefited by introducing YouTube into the classroom. We benefited by having technology breaks in the classroom. We benefited by teaching a whole generation of professors how to use the technology and how to reach people globally. But one of the interesting drawbacks or learning tools that we found out about women in the workforce, right, was that they were able to work fine from home, but they also had to juggle the kids that were home as well. And this idea of a hybrid workforce, and then how to use technology differently so that an important discriminated group that can make a huge difference, and did, to our economy moving forward, can stay active and engaged, but maybe work differently than they did before. And hopefully we learn that that's possible.
Yeah.
And that we'll be able to adjust that moving forward. If we haven't, then it's a great disgrace.
I think so too. So I do want to move on to, let's start with relationships and networking, because obviously we all have a lot to say, and some of us have been in this industry for a long time, and we are relationship networking veterans. But I think, you know, from a skills standpoint, this is not necessarily something that's supernatural when you're in college or when you're Aria's age. Definitely not. What the heck was I doing when I was his age? Who even knows? What were any of us doing? But as people are really been more digital in the last 2.5 years, how should they think about networking and relationship building? I mean, the fact that you're putting yourself out there like this to just have this conversation is amazing. And part of the fearlessness that I think comes with this next generation is the willingness to do that more, but maybe we don't know how. So how do you guys think, I mean, and Rebecca, I'm gonna start with you because you are a networking queen. I mean, we only met last year and I've seen you on every social media platform, I think, with a very hefty following, and you engage. You're not just there posting, but you're really engaging. I mean, every time I've reacted to like an Instagram story of yours, we're having a full conversation in the messages. So talk about your experience and what's worked for you.
I think my biggest lesson from either using social media or any type of networking mainly is that I found that it has to come very authentically from me. When I tried to use play with algorithms or anything like that, it wasn't interesting and it didn't work. But what it comes down to is what I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about New York City. I'm passionate about real estate. And it comes through in everything I do.
It does.
And the biggest thing when people watch my Instagram stories, even if I'm not like taking them in a tour of a building or anything, is they're like, we love how you portray New York City, like the everyday New York City, the ugly, the great, the music, everything about it.
It's very honest.
Yeah, and the thing is, I walk around whatever I'm doing each day, and I take these photos or these videos, and it's naturally a part of what I do.
Yeah.
So what goes up is natural, and it's just fun for me to portray what I love to do. So that's what comes across, and then that's where people just started enjoying it, and then that's how I just made connections and relationships, because in the end, for me, my whole business is all about the relationships I built. And business and deals and deal making isn't done through, me giving a piece of paper saying this is for sale, or do you want to buy this? It's about me knowing that person, knowing what they own, knowing what they want to build, whatever it may be, me kind of knowing who they are. And that has to come from me knowing about them. So that's you can't build relationships just over emails and everything. And one of the biggest takeaways from pandemic was actually, because we weren't in the city as much, finding different ways to connect with people, and one of that was using Clubhouse.
Yes.
Which, interestingly enough, I met so many people from
I think that's how we met.
from across the world,
I think that's how we met.
and being able to connect on a real estate standpoint, talking about so many different asset classes, and people I just never would have come across
Right.
in just walking around or anything like that, and having real conversations, like literally getting deals done because we all had this similar thing to connect with. And that's the great thing about technology, but that's also bringing it back to what, the age-old part of real estate is handshaking and doing those deals by having those conversations. And you can't just have conversations if you don't have the people to connect with as well. So
She said getting deals done, just for anybody who didn't hear that. This is not just all,
yeah, that's what it is.
mystical,
Absolutely.
networking and relationships. This is how you get deals done.
Absolutely.
I mean, and I can tell you guys a quick story about Sandy and I think when I approached Sandy to speak on one of the panels, I think it was probably in 2015. Sandy did not respond to me for years. And it took persistence. No. This is not a knock on Sandy. This is how the industry works. Who was I? I was just some girl that was reaching out to you like everybody else on LinkedIn. I'm sure your LinkedIn messages are jammed. Your inbox is jammed with tech companies who want to pitch to you and everybody. Who was I? But I was persistent and I was patient and I asked you every year until one day you were like, sure, Truly. And now we're good friends and we get to do this stuff often, and I get the privilege of learning from you and having your insights. And I think part of it is just being persistent and patient. And it's not something that we have in this next generation, but we need to have that with this industry because that's how it works. Relationships don't happen overnight. They don't. And the relationships that happen overnight, they don't last.
Well, it's interesting because we do get, email overload. We get so many messages on all the different social media platforms, and there are times where you're just focused on work.
Yeah,
and
of course.
you don't have time. And it's interesting. So many times, on social media, we'll get that single, I want to connect you with nothing behind it. So there's no connection point. It's as if you're just a statistic that they want to increase the number of followers versus
Sure.
a well thought out introduction of why we should possibly connect. And those are some of the things that people don't do. You can't replace through an email the phone call. The little, just even last night when there were a group of us, getting together, to be able to walk across the room and have that quick conversation, that soundbite, read the body language. Even before when we were just talking and saying hello to each other. Those are connections that, take time to do that, but you have to have a reason. And, you're right, you and I now, we've connected. I will never forget that one time when we were at one of the Disrupt events down at Old Slick down
Okay,
right?
yeah. I think that was the first one you did with me, yeah.
And I was late, I had to get out, and somebody had stopped me, and I spent probably about 30 minutes just talking to people that came up to talk to me out of respect that, they wanted to talk to me.
Of course.
And it was really very nice of you. You came over and your mom came over and you were both so grateful because there were other people, their panel was done, they bolted out.
Yeah.
And I stood there and I talked to people until everybody was done. And for me, there were new connections that I had made. It was listening to people, getting their feedback so I can learn and maybe do a better job the next time because that's how we learn from feedback. And we incorporate it into our thinking. And sometimes we just have to stop and slow down our world and put away the technology and have those face-to-face conversations of networking, and that is really the best way to connect.
Yeah.
It really is, and to your point, it is about doing the deal on a handshake, being able to pick up the phone and say, hey, I have a perfect space for you and here's why from a broker perspective.
Right.
Or if you're doing an acquisition or even just a new piece of technology, getting on the phone and saying, hey, listen, here's what we're thinking about doing. Does this idea resonate with you? Shadowing somebody to talk to them, to see what their day is like, to see will the technology solve it, to understand all of those things. And you can't do that with technology. It's the human connection that we really need.
Right. So communicating through social media or email digitally with great purpose to get to that face-to-face. And it's not going to happen right away. I know with me even, and I'm not a high-level executive that makes technology decisions in a real estate portfolio, we all get inundated. And our time is spent at home in our real life, hopefully with our families and loved ones, and we have to make a little bit more of an active effort to put ourselves out there to have those in-person conversations. But look at us, and it's so many years later, and I know your lovely daughter, my mom, and we get to do this, and we get to talk, and all of the people that get to watch have the pleasure of that. So patience, persistence.
So I have a question. What can we do better to connect with you? So let's just say you had some product that you wanted to showcase to a real estate company to listen to you. How would you want us to respond to you, or what do we need to do so that we can engage with you? Because I think that's important, because we need to be open to listening to you and understand how you would approach us, so when we see that knock on the door, we understand from your perspective of how you're reaching out.
I'd say if you do research on how, say I've done this before, and you could research, say you find the other company that I've pitched this product to, you could research about that company and take the feedback that they have from what I said to them, and make sure you can understand and know it's gonna be coming from my mouth to tell you.
Do your homework, is what he's saying. Do your homework. I like that answer. Let's hear from Cameron.
Thank you. Dude, that was fantastic. He kind of just spun that right back on you.
But that's what it should be. It's the interactive content. It's perfect.
Yeah.
That was brilliant. You know, when you find value in yourself, you start to find value in other people, right? And when you have something that you truly believe in enough that the entire world needs to be a part of it, or that any person in this room could somehow affect or become a part of what you're doing, that's when you start to be able to connect with other people. Like, you have to have that belief in yourself first. You have to have that self-value. Like, you have to find something, that idea that you have that's been brewing up, and you have to believe in it enough for you to see every person that's around you as part of it as well. Right? There's nothing more powerful in this world than an idea whose time has come. Right? So when you have that idea and you're like, you know what, this is it for me. This is who I am. Everyone needs to resonate. It resonates with everyone around you. Right? It becomes part of you.
I totally agree with you, but you also need the person who says, I know you can do it, right? Mm-hmm. Someone who believes in you. Yeah. So I'm a lawyer by trade. I was doing lease negotiations for many years, but I had a mentor in the corporation I was working with. After we pitched the idea of a new corporate headquarters, walking back to his office, he said to me, Ryan, you can do it, just run with the idea. Once I had someone who believed in me and my ability to do it, I didn't want to fail for him. Now, the value of networking is I never went to school for design construction. Why would I be the one to build a skyscraper on the New York City skyline, right? It's because I surrounded myself with people that I got to know over a period of time, being a leader in the real estate environment, that allowed the diversity of knowing contractors, knowing builders, knowing environmental people, knowing government associates, knowing so many people. And that's the great thing about real estate. You can know such a great group of a variety of different people, and then being able to call upon them to help me. And then if given that challenge, right, Cameron, and you'll have that challenge sometime in your career, you want to do the best that you possibly can. So again, you're putting your hand on their shoulder and saying, hey, listen, I trust you. I really need the very best woodworker on this project. This just can't be a plain vanilla woodworker. Or it's going to the stone crafter and saying to him, you know what, I really appreciate this. This is going to look magnificent in our lobby. You're devoting your life to this, but let me tell you about what this is going to mean to so many other people. So sometimes it's just recognizing them, that person-to-person communication we're talking about. But even if you send an email after a thank you note or connect back with someone later, I think it's so important. And half of my job now is to really lift up these students who have lived through a pandemic, who haven't had that personal interaction, and tell them that I believe in you. This is a great opportunity. Go for it. I'll help you do it.
And you are that amazing champion, and it doesn't go unnoticed. And that's why Cameron and I had the pleasure of meeting, because you said this is an outstanding student.
Cameron's a winner.
He's a winner, but you know what? He also, I'm sure, part of his confidence in entering this space is because he has you and you have his back. And so we were able to connect, and immediately I was like, yeah, of course Brian connected
with us. If I'm lucky enough to live a longer life than I already have, and I love the question of, how do you know so much? I said, well, I've lived a life, but it's not over yet, right? So I'm constantly learning what you're talking about.
Thankfully, yeah, we all.
He and his generation is going to be responsible in the world that I live in. So there's only so much I can do to impart what I think the best values or characters of the next built environment should be, and who those people should be that kind of can lift us up. But it's the responsibility is totally going to be on his shoulder.
Yeah.
And this generation, the next generation, it goes beyond the generation that's already in place.
Yeah.
And it's going to have a huge impact on tomorrow.
No pressure, Aria. So I want to dovetail this, as long as everybody is okay with me moving on. I want to dovetail this into skills, because relationships are everything in this industry, and they're everything in life. Right? In the full ecosystem of our lives, our relationships are what matter most. And it's why when we have the confidence of our families and loved ones and peers and colleagues and our champions that are in our corner, it's why we can be the full expression of who we are, why we can go have that fearlessness and not worry about failure, right? Because people have our back, it's the foundation. But there's a skill set that comes with networking. There's a skill set that comes with finding confidence. There's a skill set that comes with relationship building, and it's not something that everybody just wakes up and has. I have been a public speaker now for years. I've been doing the conferences and I've been on videos, but I promise you, when they threw me in at the last minute to be the host of the Disrupt CRE conferences and Conference 2, I was nervous. I would definitely not be able to be sitting here like this young man right here at age 12. So there's a skill set that's needed. There's a skill set to understanding technology, right? And so let's start with Aria. I know that you, and I'll shout out to Alex Hodara for starting Rocket Club School, because it's an amazing school that's built for students ages 7 to 14 to teach them entrepreneurship and real skills. So can I hear about some of the skills that you're learning in school, some of the things that you feel like have helped you develop?
So some of the skills that I think helped me develop my passion for real estate would definitely be the things that we've learned in Rocket Club, like the technologies we've learned, so like that you can use to make real estate, you can bring it to a whole nother level. It's not just like, okay, we're gonna do it old school. There have to be like new perspectives that can change the whole picture of real estate.
So like, is that some like metaverse technology and virtual reality? I know you guys do a lot with virtual reality. What other techs do you mess with?
So we also use EV3 robotic kits.
Cool. Very, very cool.
And that's mainly it.
Cool, very nice. Do you guys get to learn a lot about entrepreneurship too, outside of just tech skills? And I remember when I did Rocket Club Live, you guys had some killer questions for me. So you guys really get to ask a lot of questions to business professionals. So what kind of skills did that teach you?
It taught me, like, if you have this dream, you have to follow your dreams, because if you don't follow your dreams, then one day you might be in a job that you don't like, and you want to like what you do.
Of course. Ideally, you want to love what you do, right? And be excited about it every day. And you have a great perspective of, especially in environments like the metaverse, that you can build anything out of your imagination. And you can do that in the real world too.
Yes, definitely.
Awesome. Brian, can you talk about some of the skills, or maybe you wanted to dovetail?
Sure. So networking is not on the curriculum, but every class I have is about getting people to stand up and present and speak, right? So speaking skills, writing skills are very important, and you need to say to certain individuals, particularly in the international community, speak up. Let's hear what you have to say. What you have to say has value, and that's classroom communication. In terms of actually interacting, I try to bring people with me to networking events that I get invited to kind of show them how to intermingle, how to start a conversation. And it's really as simple as, boy, it's raining outside, you know, and then boom, or meeting someone in the elevator and saying, hi, I really love those socks, that's incredible. You know, where'd you get them? You're standing out today, right? Or look at this
You're
man's
shining today.
look at this man's shoes here. But and then, you know, if you have a sports team, right? The Mets did great today. Geez, I was really hoping the Rangers would go all the way. It's just one of those simple things, what's in the news, et cetera, that kind of breaks you in. And then before you know it, you could say, oh, you know, I read about that development you had on the far west side. That's really awesome. Is it a possibility I can come see it one day? Or I'd love to know who you used as an engineer on that project. That was so unique. How did you get that into the bedrock of Manhattan based on where it's located? Or can you tell me a little bit about sustainability? I have a real interest in that. But now, more days, I'll turn to someone and say, you know, Cameron has a real interest in sustainability. Tell them how you went about doing that. So it's being open to questions. Absolutely what we just heard. I grew up asking questions. That's how I became an attorney, right? But so I'm just naturally curious, and that's the best advice I give people. Ask people a question. Be curious. Ask to be invited somewhere. What's the worst they're going to say? No?
Right. I think it's a beautiful way to put yourself out there, is to ask questions, and people are receptive, truly. Actually, it's one of the reasons that I love working with Rocket Club so much, because these kids ask the best questions. And it's not something that everybody has right away. I think it can be something that you learn, but just remembering that we're all human, and you're having a conversation with people that have hobbies and lives outside of just their career, and tapping into that.
And then I tell Cameron, just flash that smile. You know,
Yeah,
you gotta
I
go
mean,
down.
yeah. If you're
Flash it for the
Cameron,
camera.
if you're Cameron, you can just flash the smile.
Resist
Yeah.
that top smile.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at this smile.
I know. Yeah, if you're these guys, that's it.
When I was like your age, I had about 40 teeth in my mouth. I had to get 12 teeth taken out of my mouth just to get braces on.
Oh, no.
So like, yo, use that smile. It costs money, but be grateful for it. It'll get you far in life. I just want to dovetail off, if you can say it. What Brian's saying, just being curious. Curiosity is just, I used to hate the term when I was younger. I didn't understand like how counterproductive it was. Curiosity killed the cat. So counterproductive. Like curiosity, like just keep being curious about people, like genuinely interested in what they're doing, who they are, finding what's important to them. Like that's why we're all sitting here together, right? We're trying to figure out what's important to each one of us. That way we can, we can start to develop a better future for each one of us as well. So I'm going to pass it right off to Sandy.
No, we're so right about passion and curiosity, as I call it. But it's interesting, over the years, and I'm going to take a slightly different perspective on this. As you know, I've spent a lot of time with prop tech companies, and I've seen some really brilliant ideas, some great technology, and then you start to understand and you talk to them, they have no idea about what problem they're trying to solve. They're not asking the questions of, what is it, what's the problem set? What's not working? What can we do better? So it gets back to curiosity, it gets back to asking questions. It's how we all learn every day, by asking the questions and really trying to understand, going back to the different perspectives. So it all keeps coming back to a couple of those different things. And you need the technology stack, but you also need the soft skills, which is missing from a lot of people, of how do you deal with a difficult conversation, or how do you deal with rejection? When you think about selling prop tech, other than probably actors who get rejected all the time, trying to sell your software or your technology vision is probably, you get the largest rejection. So you've got to get that perseverance to get back up, pick it up. So you've got to learn those soft skills. You've got to learn how to deal with those moments, how to be clear and concise when you sell. I'm going to age myself. Back in the day, in your release, we had something called an elevator pitch. So, when you got in the elevator, you had about 45, 60 seconds to sell your product. And if you couldn't do it clearly and concisely, you lost the sale. So there are all these different, and that's a soft skill of communications and how you interact with people and engage. Go ahead, you look like, go ahead.
You have an elevator pitch? Did you know how to do it?
Yeah.
All right, tell us your elevator pitch.
Where should I start?
You have 45 seconds in the elevator to sell the product.
Nobody's time.
Okay, so I created this product which will help you see how a building will be put up in the metaverse without actually putting it in real life. It will help us see what will happen over the years to the building, and it will also see how long the process will take.
Wow.
There you go.
Oh, that was way
Concise.
under 45 seconds.
And when you want to know more about it, now that just
100%.
started the conversation going, and that took like 2 or 3 seconds.
And you start asking the questions, and you have the dialogue.
Yeah, I almost feel like that was like too short, that he did such a good job that I'm like, hold on, there's gotta be more.
One thing about, making the connections and the relationships is people think that it's a natural thing that comes naturally to some people, and to be very honest, it really doesn't come naturally for me. It's something that I've kind of just perfected, and I've learned how to keep composure in certain circumstances to make it seem natural. But it's not something that you will always feel comfortable with, and that's part of anything in life, is you're not always going to feel comfortable doing most things, a lot of things, but the thing is you still can use that discomfort to keep you moving forward. And it's okay to not feel comfortable because you shouldn't feel too comfortable in anything you do. And that's how I've kind of refined, kind of perfected what I do, is because sometimes I'm like, I don't know if they'll talk to me, I don't know, even going into any sort of networking situation. But I'm like, whatever, at this point it's kind of, sometimes I walk up to, I've met developers I've wanted to talk to about buildings or projects. All I know is I know this project inside and out, and I don't know anything about them. I know, but people are like, "Oh no, he can't. He won't give anyone the time of day." And I make it a point to kind of almost connect with them on something a little bit mundane, because they have people coming up to them all the time. So it's kind of being able to just use your discomfort to your advantage, and understand, like, everybody out there, especially in a networking event, nobody's 100% like, this is the best time ever. Like, this is what I want to do every single day, But we know what we're there for. The purpose is to follow up and make these really, like, wonderful relationships come out of it, and it has to start somewhere.
Yeah, leaning into that discomfort, leaning into that fear at times, right? That's right at that line where we get to that point. We've all been there, right? Mario, you've been there probably 1,000 times with Disrupt CRE.
Yeah.
You've been there 1,000%. Sandy, telling us about it. Brian, I'm sure, being an attorney, we get these like every single day. But you get to that point, right? And I call it the I do line, right? Like right before you get married, you have to engage to the person. You have to reach out to give them right at that line where you're like, this is way too tough for me to continue. It's way too uncomfortable. I've never been in this space. I don't know how I'm going to make it tomorrow. I don't know if anybody's ever going to accept me. I don't know how I'm going to pay for my bills this next month. And for you to continue to believe in yourself, like past that point. If you can wake up tomorrow and still say I do to that dream that you had that brought you to that same line, that's where your breakthrough is. And that's where your success lies. And I know every single person in this room has had that happen, because it happened to me more than once in my life. So I know it's going to happen again, but that's the only time that you know is really valuable.
And just because you believe in yourself doesn't mean that you don't feel moments of vulnerability or being scared or, really
discouraged.
Right.
Potentially discouraged.
It's quite the opposite. You feel it so often.
So often.
You feel it so often, and what makes you successful is your ability to address it, to lean into the problem, to address the problem, and find a resolution, right? To walk into a room, you're like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I feel super nervous. I feel weird. I know if I start the next conversation, it's going to be weird, and doing it anyway.
Yeah.
Because fear is nothing but an illusion, right? But your dream is real. So, just leaning into it.
I think it comes with time. I think the most, seasoned networkers, and I have to say, I do feel like it's very natural for me to make relationships. It wasn't always that way, and I think some people would be surprised that I think of myself as more of an introvert, because I can be very extroverted. But every time I host an event, every time we have a conversation, we try something new, like live streaming on LinkedIn or putting out a video, it's extremely vulnerable. It's extremely vulnerable. And so I think we have to remember that people are human, and that those are natural human emotions. The most confident, most outspoken people have fear. They feel vulnerability, and especially since we haven't been in person in a few years and not like the way we used to. I used to draw a lot of confidence and willingness to be vulnerable from doing these in-person events, and we haven't been doing that for many years. So I think we can forget that when we're having these big feelings that other people experience them too, and even if they appear outwardly very confident, it's always a little bit of a funny feeling. But then you jump into it and it can be magic, just like this, right? And it feels good, and you ride that energy and you remember, right? So once you do it and you get past that strange feeling or that awkward feeling of putting yourself out there, that's when some really amazing feelings and muscle memory can start to build, and then you remember that, and then the next time and the next time and the next time. I mean, Arya, I would love to hear where some of your confidence in being willing to put yourself out there comes from.
I'd say most of my confidence comes from the people who support me. If they support me, when they support me, I feel this boost, which helps me, which drives me forward.
I feel the same way. Does that mean we have We got 30 minutes, okay. I wanna quickly jump back to where I had it a little bit earlier in the conversation to community development. And I want Cameron to kick us off because when we got a chance to chat and connect, it was clearly a point of passion for you and a point that I think a lot of the next generation can connect with our industry from.
Right, and I will try to keep this short because like
No,
you said,
don't
it's
try
my-
to keep
it's
it
my
short.
passion,
We're here. This
right?
is what we're doing here.
Yeah, it's my passion. Like community economic development, that's my passion, that's my purpose, and I'm using real estate as a vehicle to achieve my passion of community economic development. So just a little background. Before I even went to the Peace Corps, I was a Boy Scout, you know, so I'm an Eagle Scout actually. After that, I went to Penn State, did a bunch of work in the community, not only at the school, but also in the surrounding community, because I understood the importance of community. And there, we also did some research in the commercial environment to understand what was happening to our community. And then I went to the Peace Corps and did community economic development there. And coming back home in the midst of a pandemic, I didn't want to come back home, to be honest with you. I wanted to stay out in Costa Rica. Like, who would?
Yeah.
And then, you know, I get a text message at 9 a.m. from our country director, and he's just like, you know, pack 2 50-pound bags and get on your next immediate transportation outside of your site. And I was like, what? You know, I just finished doing my push-ups in the morning. It doesn't look like it, but I do my push-ups. So I pack up because they're closing the borders. They're closing the borders to countries, you know, like United States, like, you know, this is it. We're not letting anyone else in here. And I'm like, wow, it's time for me to come home. And I get home, I go to the grocery market, no mask, because I've been living in a very country town for 2 years, 215 people. And, you know, I go into a grocery store, and there's already more than 215 people in the grocery store, and everyone has a mask on. And I'm like, what is going on here, right? And the part that's most critical to me and like how I connect to this world is through people. Not having access to that for so long, I was kind of lost, you know, for those 2 years in the pandemic when it was like really, really bad. So coming to New York City, and you know, which is completely different from Costa Rica, you know, in a good way.
To say the least.
In a good way. And being able to engage with people that are from communities that are being changed every single day, and teaching them the importance and the power that they have as they exist to be able to change their environment, right? So I came to New York and I started a business, right? And a lot of people don't know this because I keep it to myself for now. It's called Stature. And the impact of Stature is that we teach people, no matter where you're from, who you are, you don't have to wait for change to happen to you. You can create the change. You don't have to leave your community to go to an environment that looks better. You can make your community look the way you want it to look, right? It's exactly what you're doing in technology. That's a lot of what we're doing in our firms and our businesses. We're teaching people that, you know, you don't have to run away to find your purpose and your vision and your passion. Right where you are, right where you exist. If you just dig in, if you imagine, if you have an idea, you know, you're able to create the environment that you want for everyone around you. So that's,
Well, I think
I can keep going, but.
No, I mean, I think when we connected, it was kind of a very unique perspective and approach for what drives you to be in this space and to learn and to be active in your community through real estate. And I think that it can be an incredible point of inspiration for other young people who may feel that they want to change the circumstances of their community or their own position, or you know, they can help maybe each other see opportunities where they couldn't see that before.
Yeah, one more time.
Got it.
So I'm from Philadelphia, and in the last 10 years, Philadelphia has just seen a tremendous change. In the neighborhood my family's from is called Northern Liberties, Philadelphia, and Northern Liberties is now where a bunch of basketball stars live. But before, it was where a bunch of basketball stars would probably not ever, you know, walk through. And you know, I've spoken to my family and a lot of residents in the area, and it's just like this disheartening feel that, you know, we had something that was really attractive, which attracted the people there in the first place, right? There's this historic real estate gem that followed the artist, wherever the artists are, follow them, because that's where, you know, the money's going to be in the future, right? And in Northern Liberties, we had so many artists. We had this place called the Piazza, where a bunch of people just went out and danced. And it was a live community, right? And that's what attracted the different developers. And now we see so many people coming in, they're changing the way it looks, they're changing the landscape, and the people in the community are like, why is this happening to us? And I just want them to change that question. It's like, what can we do to change what's happening around us? You know, and that doesn't mean that, you know, it stays in the same condition that it is. It doesn't mean that it looks dilapidated. It doesn't mean that it looks undeveloped or underdeveloped. It means it looks the way we want it to look. And it's still attractive to people coming in there, but we still live there. We own the things that are around us. Right? That's the point that, you know, we have to get to. Where we're enabling people, we're encouraging people, we're empowering people to change their own environment. Because people have great ideas. Like these kids, when you go into the metaverse and see some of their ideas, they have casinos, they have clubs, they have restaurants, they have video games within the video game.
Right.
Like there's so much that they've been able to create. And just as if you were to give the people that are living in so many developments, we're looking at the, you know, developing NYCHA all throughout New York City right now. If you give the people that are in NYCHA the power to create and imagine what they could live in, the endless possibilities that you would see some architecture that you've never even imagined come to life. You know, that's the power of community engagement and community development.
You know, one system that hasn't worked as well as it should be is the local community boards. Because the local community boards, you know, for example, right now in Astoria, there's a lot of development being planned for the next 5 to 10 years, and it's, you know, certain things were promised, may or may not be delivered, and the community board is trying to slow it down to understand and deliver. So one of the places people can get active is in on their community boards. It's not easy, but if you get on the community board, you can help create and change the vision of what's to come in your neighborhood. So that's something that I think people need to be more active in.
Absolutely, and access to capital, access to conversations, access to networks like this, right? Mentorship is extremely important, but also sponsorship. You know, I believe in your idea. Here's some money. You know, like, I think that you're going to be brilliant, and you can create a brilliant office in the future. Here's $50 million to do it, you know? Like, with some guidance, of course, you know?
Sure.
Because the first thing I would do would probably buy a Ferrari. But sponsorship to go along with it, you know, talk the talk, walk the walk, and let your money talk for you sometimes.
The other thing is people don't always realize, like, big policy changes don't start from the top down. Like, it doesn't really start from like the White House and it filters down to the neighborhoods. Strong communities, like when you're able to bring the people of the community together, whether it be through real estate, through businesses or economic development, you build a strong community. All of that change and positivity goes upwards, and that's how you really change and you create that better vision of the world and everything that you want to see. And in having conversations with owners or developers, and you know, a lot of it, like let's talk in New York City, is about buying up properties, buying up land to build this or that, and that horrible word of gentrification. But the thing is, when you have the conversation about how there are developers who want to come in, strengthen that community to maintain what was beautiful about it all along, sometimes you need to bring that money in. You need to bring those people from the outside in to get that perspective in. You need to allow that change to come so that parts of it can maintain. Otherwise, sometimes it just crumbles, and unfortunately, once it's gone, it's gone. So.
Well, I think that was a very interesting point that you made, because I think when a lot of people think about influencing their community, we think about what they can build, like what cool buildings, facilities, schools, workplaces, co-working, but maintaining the historical integrity of what's there, what makes that community special, is just as important, and it's just as much of a real estate strategy. So
Yeah.
I don't think...
And we need to be looking at job development as well, right? So we're talking about technology, but there are all sorts of new jobs that can happen in the world of technology, on construction, or in design, or in property operations, or any number of areas. And those are things that we need to be looking at when we're building or changing the built environment.
I do you want to add to that?
Yeah, and you know, just so development looks different here in New York than it did in Costa Rica.
For sure. I would hope so. We're doing something wrong otherwise.
I guess one of my pet peeves is when people say like, "Oh, it's a third world country, underdeveloped." I'm like, the quite developed. Like the way they create relationships with other people, the way they interact with other people is quite much more developed than any other place that I've been in my life. And you know, just speaking to what you said, sometimes development is tearing down. Sometimes development is demolition. Development is meeting the needs of the people in your community, meeting the needs of people that are, you know, have a demand for space. You know, sometimes that means tearing down. You can go into industrial space, you can go into residential space. Sometimes we need to create more park spaces. Sometimes we need to create an ice rink or, you know, a basketball field or something that people can use recreationally. It's not always building. Real estate isn't just about building more, right? It's not, you know, New York isn't just in the future going to be a bunch of buildings with no park areas. It's going to be a bunch of parks. It might be more parks than there are today, right? It's just to meet the need of the people that are around us. That's what real estate is, and that's what development is.
Well, and I also think it requires a level of consideration, not just for like the buildings that we need and the public spaces that we need, but how can we get creative around making the existing buildings better? How can we make them smarter and more sustainable for the future that we want to have, right? For the generation that ultimately will be able to hopefully apply their creativity to what's coming next.
Yeah, so when I was building the Hearst Tower, it was after 9/11, right? So the building itself is the most technologically advanced that you can have in the field.
Wow.
It is the most sustainable that it's ever been in the field. It's platinum LEED now, right? It was open plan. It involved the community in terms of the Good Housekeeping Institute and other areas within the lobby. It served a purpose for a transition of hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs that were moving from one form of communication to the new digital world. And then it presented as a leader in that area what we could do in Hudson Yards and downtown Manhattan afterwards. But if I could tell you how many people would say to me, green building, what's that? You know, you were a tree hugger? What's going on?
Right.
Or I don't understand, what is this resiliency question? Or why are we moving towards all of this technology? We don't need all of that. And it became a beacon for change because we were looking for the latest and greatest, but also the most productive materials and inventions that we could use to kind of showcase the greatness of New York and what America has in terms of its genius in attracting, retaining the best, and attracting the best talent to come work on it when you're competing against other companies in New York City. And I think that's what we have to do. We have to not accept complacency. We have to ask, how can we do this better? We have to understand how to ask the right questions. Not that you're a tree hugger. Why wouldn't I build the healthiest building possible? And if I'm going to spend all this money, why wouldn't we want to have better air, better light? Why wouldn't we think about the health and wellness of the individuals that are going to be inside? Aren't they our family? Aren't we thinking of this as a home renovation more than just a piece of real estate? So it's the way that dialogue or suggestion takes place, and then the negotiation, right? So the involvement of the city, the involvement of the community, tax breaks to incentivize sustainability, the ability to build things around transit, right? Handicapped elevators. The city should be embarrassed. The MTA should be embarrassed how we have not made our subways handicapped accessible. So why wouldn't we think about how we could get a subway improvement bonus so that we can get a little bigger building?
And this is to our point about diversity and inclusion, you know, before, and how everybody uses the city
And
differently.
why wouldn't you have minority inclusion within the number of jobs in place? So all of those things then become, if they can do it, or if I can do it, why can't you do it?
Right.
And you know what? You should be able to do one better. Because again, you don't want to accept complacency.
Right. I want to ask you about the nature of tech founders entering the space. We've had a pretty steady flow of new startups entering the space, at least in the last 8 years that I've been, you know, in this industry, and maybe prop tech definitely wasn't a word that we were using back in 2013-14. But so what do you think is going to inspire more tech founders to pick us, to pick commercial real estate? Like, what can we do? Because I know that I didn't understand the profound impacts that we have on the environment as an industry until I actively started asking questions and attending association meetings. But I don't think your average tech founder, especially if they're coming from another industry, is sitting in a Coronet or USGBC or NAIOP meeting to understand and be able to ask questions. So what is the state of things? What is going to inspire them to choose us?
Well, it goes back to something we said before of understanding what the problems and challenges are. That's the first piece of it. Because if you're not solving an existing problem, people aren't going to spend the money on it. We're in an interesting time right now. We've got inflation, we've got increased interest rates, which means our investments are going to be more selective. So there has to be a return on investment. I think a lot of the prop tech companies don't think about what is the true return on investment. They're looking at it from a tech perspective. So they need to understand that. It's, are we saving money? Potentially, you think about sustainability. Are we reducing our energy costs? Okay. It's, are we adding an amenity that we can attract additional tenants? Are we going to be able to maintain the rents? Okay. So these are all the little different nuances that people have to think about. Because at the end of the day, we have a limited supply, we've got continual construction, right? We also have our highest levels of vacancy in a long time, and that's not going to change for some time. And, is it something that can repurpose a building? Some of those types of prop tech solutions. We have all these office buildings that are right now at, 20% physical occupancy, which is something about turnstiles, not about leasing. Can we repurpose that building? Are there prop tech initiatives out there that can help? Those are the things that people want to see right now. The ESG, the sustainability, is a large piece of it. When you think about the cost to run a piece of real estate, it's taxes, it's utilities. So those are the things that really make a difference. When you think about the next generation, because that's part of what we're here for today. When I think about the engineer that ran the building several years ago, their utility belt was, a screwdriver, a wrench. Now it's an iPhone, it's a piece of technology to connect to the building. They're completely wired, wireless everywhere. It's how do you do those things and bring those add values to the building? And there's got to be a value proposition. People will not spend money, particularly in the environment, unless they understand the return, unless it's solving an initial problem. And again, the cool whiz-bang technology is not going to really work anymore. People are trying to figure out, what do we do with digital twins? Where's the real value in that? It's kind of nice to have, but it's not helping me run our real estate more efficiently. I think about your technology right now. If I can build a new building more efficiently because I can look at things from a different perspective, there's value in that. Because it's the old measure twice, cut once. Well, I can look at building a new building from a different perspective, from public space, amenities, how it connects my people with an open floor plan, things of that nature. That's the kind of technology you have that you're starting to think about with the metaverse that can make a difference because we can do it right and look at it from all the different perspectives because, bringing again all this together, we talk about the different perspectives and we talk about the diversity and the inclusion. How do we factor all those in? And you need the technology, you need the metaverse, you need the prop tech that actually enables all of that so we can build smarter buildings that are more cost efficient and actually want to attract people to come back to the office or convert them into residential because we always have residential spaces that we need.
So to try and fail without the real life implications is a beautiful thing. I think what a lot of tech founders I kind of notice maybe get wrong is that they look at the industry and they say, well, why doesn't it just work like this? I'm gonna go build that thing. And they forget to engage with like the context of how we've been doing things and why, right? Consulting with some of the people who have been part of building these buildings and why it doesn't work the way that they, with their eyes, see that they think it could. And so I think when you don't employ that context and you don't do your homework to an extent, you go after a vision that you see and it's not the big picture.
Well, then it goes back to passionate curiosity of asking the questions, networking and talking to as many different people that you can to gain those perspectives, to incorporate those into your thinking. So, when you think about it, these are all really connected when you start to think about how it all comes together and we make smarter decisions.
What is your best, we'll just stick with you, Sandy, because you're on a roll. What is your best advice for the next generation, either looking to work in commercial real estate ideally, or just like generally starting their careers?
So I think, somebody mentioned it before, probably I think it was you, find a mentor, right? Find somebody in the industry that you can connect with, and you make that personal connection first, like you said before, so that you have the common bond versus just, I need your help. And then, talk to them, let them, share their successes, and more importantly, share their failures, because that's what we all learn from. I mean, God knows I've made plenty of mistakes, I'm still making them, but I learn from each one. So find a mentor who has the same passions that you have, that has the same drive that you have, and they'll be more than happy to take you under their wing, to collaborate with you, to share with you. And then, by the way, you get to start to network with other people, and then you start to form your own opinions, and you're just learning. And it's really finding those couple of people and finding, the right community of like-minded people that want to change the world, that want to change real estate, and just continue to ask the questions, continue to be passionate. And by the way, never take no for an answer. So we had this conversation last night. I'm going to share this very quickly. Because I've been very fortunate in this career, and I love real estate. I love what I'm doing. I'm having more fun now than ever. I actually started college at 16. All right, so I can relate to a certain degree because I started way young, and there were awkwardnesses of just me being young in college, dealing with people that were older than me, and having to fake the maturity. And by the way, never lose sight of your age and enjoy life, because you only get to be a teenager once, and I made that mistake, so don't make that mistake. And then later on in my career, I was doing a great job. I thought I was going to be made partner one year, and at year end, I'm sitting down, and it was, listen, you're doing a great job, you should be a partner, but you're still young, don't worry about it, you'll be a partner next year. And what I did, it bothered me that I was being told that just because you're this particular age, you're not going to get the partnership you deserve. Don't let that dissuade you, don't let it discourage you, take it as motivation to prove them wrong, and just keep running with it and believe in yourself and never stop.
Rebecca, what do you think about, your best advice or advice that you wish somebody maybe imparted on you?
It's okay to change your mind. You can go down many different paths in life, and part of all of those paths is what gets you to the end. But it's okay if you realize this isn't for me, because you take away something from everything that you do. You just have to remember that. But then the other thing is, it's okay to make mistakes. And sometimes you should want to make the mistakes, because if you are already doing something and it feels too perfect, it doesn't feel like you're really doing work, then maybe you really aren't, And so you should be comfortable with trying to find uncomfortable parts of what you love all the time.
I love that. Being uncomfortable makes us grow. Failure makes us grow. Aria, what would you say to your peers, other almost 8th graders around the world that maybe want to either pursue a career in entrepreneurship, or maybe they don't even know that that's something that could be cool, or maybe they also think about real estate because they get to build it in the metaverse but don't totally know if that's their passion? What would you say?
I'd say that possibilities are endless. You could do whatever you want. You can just dream about something. If you want to do something, just follow it. It doesn't matter where you're from, what you are. You can do anything you want to do.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I think we need to bottle that, or,
Right?
or play the tape back a few times every
100%.
time, because we all need to be reminded of that. I think, I mentioned that I ask a lot of questions, and I encourage students to ask questions and to never stop asking questions. I also encourage them to read. There's far less reading among a younger generation than there was in my generation or in my father's generation, just in the number of newspapers, magazines, etc. But there's a lot there on the internet, but you need to be encouraged to educate yourself, right? To go out there and follow the passion that you have. The other thing which you mentioned is, there's not just one path, right? And I think this generation has learned that there are multiple paths and you could change direction at any point. It's to be more accepting of what it is that you think you want to do and then pursuing it, right? It may not be the perfect opportunity initially, but it could be, right? And if you don't follow that dream, what you're saying about, you'll never know. And then asking people for assistance, what's the worst that someone's going to say? No, you're no better off than if you didn't ask previously. So I always tell all my students, ask, what's the worst that's going to happen, right? You any the worse off afterwards.
Right.
So so it's getting over that fear factor that we talked about and moving forward to pursue the dream that you have in your own mind of where you think this could be.
Cameron, so same question to you, like what would you say to your peers who are just starting in their careers in terms of getting involved?
I always say, say a lot, honestly, I'm about to say it too. Walk by faith and not by sight. When you get to where you want to be, it's going to look completely different than what you thought it would look. But have the conviction that in every single moment that you're in, you're exactly where you want to be. Even if it's tough, even if it's ugly, even if you feel like you're in the mud, you are exactly where you put yourself. Like, you put yourself there. So embrace it, because you're in the right place at the right time. And it's just give it a
And you'll get out of the mud.
You will. You'll get right out of it. It'll be the best. So that's why I say walk by faith, not by sight, because sometimes it's going to look a little crazy, looking from the outside in. It doesn't look the same, but it's where you need to be at that moment, especially when you're at the top as well. Look for a mentor, find a mentor. And that's also going to look like someone that you never thought it would look like. I never thought I'd have Brian as a mentor. You know what I mean? Coming into NYU, I thought it was going to be like a professor at Shack, like at the graduate level. It comes from the undergraduate level, still a mentor, I have another mentor, a really close friend of me. I met him at a ULI conference. It was complete. I never imagined for this person to even fathomly look close to this person, right? So keep your eyes open, keep your perspective open in life, and be open to change, be open to new ideas, and just be open to different things coming your way. So, yeah.
No, I was just going to say, well said.
Yes, very well said.
I was
Very well
thinking
said.
that.
I would say a couple of things, and I know we only have a couple minutes to wrap up. I think personally, I have found that when you are going to reach out to somebody and talk about purposefully reaching out, there's so much information online. If that person who you're looking for mentorship from, or you want 15 minutes of their time to go ask questions, it's likely if they're a professional that's been in the industry at least a few years, they're on a roundtable, on a panel, they're on a video and YouTube, they're on a podcast, they've been quoted in an article. Do some Google searches, find some piece of content that you connect with of that person, and reach out with intent. I learned this from you. Do you have 15 minutes so that I can learn more? Right? Make it something that you did your homework, like Arya said. Do your homework before you reach out to that person. The other thing that I will say is that young people right now, especially if you're in school and you're just coming into your careers, you haven't had the opportunity to socialize in a professional setting and hone those skills. And it can feel more intimidating than maybe it has in the past. So I think maybe, getting out of your own head a little bit when you're just home and you're thinking, should I send that email? Should I not? Should I follow up? Is that too aggressive? It's not too aggressive. Follow up again. Because you know what, if you sent me one email and I didn't get it, I promise it's not personal, but I'm also not making that a priority because you're not making it a priority. So I think sometimes, and especially in this moment for this next generation trying to enter the space, it's difficult. And I think a lot of it can, be impacted by mental health, and it's difficult in these home environments, and we're doing school virtually, and socialization is more and more difficult, we're more and more removed. Don't second guess your instincts. So listen to your gut, abide by the values and the principles that you want to uphold for yourself in your career and what you want to project for others. Don't conform necessarily to what you think the industry expects. in media and content creation, I'm expected to put out a lot of negative stuff, and that's how people are going to click on the content. And I've been told if I want to succeed in media, then I better be complying with that. But I want to put out positivity, and I think it can be challenging to stick to your guns and really feel what you want to put out into the world. So don't compromise on that. That would be my advice.
Yeah, I agree with the positivity part, but I also agree with the challenging part. I challenge REBNY, I challenge Cornet, I challenge ULI, I challenge all these industry groups to reach out to students, provide free passes to them so they can attend the conference. Create scholarships. If we want to bring this next generation in, we need to figure out where the smart ones are and not so smart ones, but bring them along with us so that we can create the vision of what we want for tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen without someone challenging you.
Yeah.
And there's more that our industry can do, and that's why I'm talking to the people that are listening now, and that's why you participate in a group here. We can't do it alone.
Yeah.
Right?
Well said, Brian. So I know we're out of time, so I want to say thank you. I feel like we could keep going, and it's the end of the day, so this is delightful.
I could listen to Cameron all day.
I know, Cameron is inspirational. Thank you guys so much for being here. Aria, thank you for being willing to put yourself in this kind of environment, which I know is not usual. Thank you to you both. Thank you to all of you if you're still watching at this time in the day. And with that, I think we're going to sign off for the afternoon. So
Let's
thanks,
wait.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
It's like the morning show. Today's show.